TalkPaymentRadio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio the way it should be heard. You got the power. Power out.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and not necessarily those of TalkPaymentRadio.com, 3MR Production, its ownership, management, or staff.
We've got the power.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkPaymentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkPaymentRadio.com, radio the way it should be heard. Joining me every week at this time, live from Washington, D.C., is Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller, how are you, sir?
I'm still learning.
All right. Mr. Fuller, tell us how we can get your two definitive works on racism and white supremacy.
You can get the textbook for victims of white supremacy by going to the website producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what should come up on the screen is a brief description of two books. One is a basic book that is called the textbook workbook for victims of racism, and racism being white supremacy. And it has a computer design on it. And then there's an additional book under the same title, only it's a word guide. On the cover of that book, you'll see the words word guide. And in that book, it's just something similar to a dictionary, but it's not a dictionary. It shows a non-white person, a black person, how to use words in a system of white supremacy. What words to look for that other people use, both black and white, white and non-white, and in what context and what questions to ask when other people use certain words, and then some suggestions about what words not to use at all. And if you do use them, find another definition for them other than the definition that is commonly accepted, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the basic book has a computer design on it, and that's the one that most people ask for. And you can get it by going to your website, the website, producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, you've had a chance to absorb, like all of us have, the March on Washington. We've done about 2 shows on it. I don't want to go through it real long, but I just want to get your thoughts on what was your impression of what you saw, and where do we go from here in terms of that, Mr. Fuller?
Well, the one of the reasons for the March on Washington was saying for jobs and freedom and jobs and justice. And the key term there was jobs, and so I guess that's what people are still looking for, even here in 2013. The black people of the world, and many white people now are beginning to say that they don't have the jobs that they want. There's a job shortage, and black people always, according to all these statistics, have fewer jobs available to them than white people in the system that has been set up for some time. That's just the way it always works. So people are just asking for jobs, and so when people demonstrate, more or less go out into the streets and have signs, this is what we call a demonstration, saying that, expressing what their needs are. And if they say that their needs are jobs and then something that's kind of abstract called freedom, because different people have their own ideas about what that means, that word freedom, what that means. But they can express whatever a sign announcing what it is they want from the people who can provide it. And presumably these would be the most powerful people, and the most powerful people on the planet, unfortunately, many of them believe in mistreating people based on color. It's called racism. And so most of these demonstrations, and the epicenter of these demonstrations, particularly the March on Washington, is about race and or racism, which, to put it in simplistic terms, means white supremacy in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Mm-hmm. And presumably, the goal is to replace that system with a better system. And that better system, presumably, would be a system of justice, which means what? Well, guaranteeing that, in my opinion, and this is a definition that I made up after 1994, because I didn't know that there was no legal definition for the word justice, so I made up one that I think will carry weight until a better one is thought up, until somebody presents me with a better one, and that is guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And I think with that type of focus, you can always measure when you have justice and when you don't have it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we've come to that moment in history where a lot of people are asking, since 1963, we're celebrating 50 years, what has changed? And I guess this is the year 2013. And I'd like to ask you that, Mr. Fuller. 50 years, and I'm sure you and I both well remember that area. I mean, I was a baby at that time, but still I was old enough to at least know what was being said, at least have some sense of my parents were telling me. But at the same time, here's my question. 50 years we're celebrating. Now that's a heck of a word, celebrating. We're celebrating something, commemorating, going down there to hear speeches and celebrate. 50 years, Mr. Fuller, you've had a chance to mark it all over the world. Has white supremacy diminished? Is it going away after 50 years, Mr. Fuller?
No, absolutely not. The system of white supremacy is the only government on the planet. And so the government of white supremacy has not gone away. That government is still the only government on the planet. There is no other government. There's a lot of people that call themselves governments. There are tribes. You have tribal governments. There are people who have families. A family of 4 people or 3 people will say that they are a government. So what do you mean by government? But if you're talking about people with the most power, the will over other people, the smartest and most powerful people on the planet, what type of government do they belong to? Mm-hmm. What type of government do they run? If they are the most powerful people on the planet, then they are the government of the people of the planet. Whomever the cartel or the group of people are who form governments, and if you have a multitude of governments, you say, now, which is the most powerful government on the planet right now, in 2013? That's the question. Mm-hmm. What is the most powerful government? And people got it by different names, but I don't care what name you call it. You have a government that's based on color. And what do you mean by that? It's based on mistreating people based on color. That is the dominant government on the planet. And what name would you give that government? Well, if you examine all the facts and all the details, you would say, well, it looks like a government of white supremacy, that people who are classified as white will be dominant over the people who they classify as non-white and mistreat those people to their convenience. And it's called racism and or white supremacy. White supremacy is racism. Racism is white supremacy. Okay. The most powerful government on the planet, and that's the government that's still in place since 1963.
All right.
It hasn't gone
changed.
anywhere.
Now I'm going to throw 3 sets of numbers out, Mr. Fuller, and I'm going to tell you why I'm going to do it. The first number is 101 million. The second number is 150 million. And the third number we talked about a little bit. We started to get into it in our last program. I think it was in a previous program, maybe not the last one. That number is 147. A report has come out that says from the Department of Agriculture that in this area of the world known as the United States, there are 101 million people who are on food aid or food stamps. That's 101 million people. There are 150 million people who are low income and or living in poverty. And yet there are 147 companies that run everything. And as I pointed out, that when I charted each one of those companies, I found out that each one of those companies was controlled or run by white people. And I had to think to myself, oh, my God, nothing much has changed. As a matter of fact, when I looked at the total number of companies, 1,138, almost the same thing was duplicated in that number. So the power has not shifted. But yet I'm looking at these numbers of people who are on food aid, a number of people who are millions of people in poverty, and the lowest poverty rate, again, is amongst white people. The highest poverty rates are amongst black people and other non-whites, like those who are classified as Latinos and or Hispanics. Mr. Fuller, let me get your thoughts on that.
Well, it's just called white supremacy. I mean, and if people get in the habit of calling it that, then we can have focus and clarity, which is what you must have if you're going to solve any problem, whether that problem is fixing a bicycle or going to the moon. You have to have focus and you have to have clarity. You can't have a lot of synonyms where the synonyms don't match people's thoughts for one problem. You're talking about a problem of white supremacy. That's just one problem. That is the problem. There is no other problem. It's not communism and capitalism and socialism and all these other strings of isms out here that go on ad infinitum. I mean, bigotry, discrimination. These are confusing terms. Just say that the problem is white supremacy. And the way to solve that problem, logically speaking, is to come up with a better system than the system of white supremacy. And that better system, logically speaking, would be a system of justice, since white supremacy is about non-justice.
Okay,
it's
so how does
imbalance between people?
How does justice then correct the 147 companies that run everything? How does it correct the 101 million people who are on food stamps? How does it correct the 150 million people who are living in poverty? Right now, as we are watching or getting ready to watch 3 presidents stand in Washington, D.C. and toll the bell for justice, and yet we're seeing all of this stuff right in front of our face. What does justice do about these things, Mr. Fuller?
Well, you go right to the definition. You have to guarantee that no person is mistreated. That's a huge order. And you have to guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, an example of that would just be 10 people in a room. That's the formula. I sometimes give that illustration to have focus and clarity. You have 10 people in a room. Every person in that room on the planet, you might say, needs help. There's no person on this planet that doesn't need some type of help. Every person needs help every minute of the day, even if it's just help in getting directions to the bus stop. That is help. So what you do, if it's 10 people in a room, you say, now we got 10 people in this room. Who are the people that need help? Everybody will hold up their hand if they're telling the truth, because everybody needs help of some type. So you say, okay, now, who is it in the room that needs the most help? So then everybody makes a list of their problems. And then you go down the line and find out whose list is the longest. It's real simple. And then you say, oh, Mary Jones has the longest list of things that she needs help with. So that means everybody has got to concentrate on helping Mary Jones because she needs help the most. It's the same formula that you use when there's a car wreck on the highway, because I can hear some people thinking, oh, he's oversimplifying the problem. No, the problem really is simple, and the solution is simple. You do the same thing you do when there's a wreck on the highway. Everybody pulls over and lets the ambulance through to do what? To go to the people who need help the most. And then you help those people, and then everybody gets back on the highway and continues on. Now, by that same formula, Mary Jones needs help the most. You help Mary Jones as fast as you can. Because you got to get to the other people because they need help too. Mm-hmm. Then you go to Fred Smith. Fred Smith is number 9. His list is a little shorter than Mary Jones' list.
Okay, but Mr.
So you
Fuller,
help him, and on and on and on until you get to the person that needs help.
But let me stop
the
you
least.
right there. Let's talk about what help is.
Yes.
When you've got 101 million people living on food stamps and 150 million living in poverty, but they're not starving. They do have they get a small supplement. Is that what you mean by help? When other people have $16 billion or $20 billion or $2 billion, what do you mean by help? Because help could mean I'll give you just enough to survive, and that's it. Is that what you mean, or what do you mean?
Constructive help. It means you have to have balance between people. That's what justice is.
Now, what
in
is
other words, you don't have an excess of people who are sitting around just sitting on top of grain and sitting in a warehouse full of milk and letting the milk spoil and pouring it out, or just eating and drinking more to excess. See, that comes down to an individual thing. There are individuals that do that just like the Roman emperors did. Just sit up and get fat all day long and get drunk all day long and go over to the Colosseum and watch people get slaughtered for entertainment, which is what you see in the system of white supremacy because it's based on the Roman Empire format. I mean, you have a small number of people on the planet who just gather everything up unto themselves and try to build a wall around everything that they gather up. Just stockpile up everything, just pile it up to the sun. I mean, and then stand there and look at it. And then every now and then hand out a few crumbs over the wall of the castle to all of the starving masses out there. It's an old formula. But when you put it on a color basis, it's even worse, and it's worse on account of the numbers. You have more non-white people on the planet than you have people classified as white.
Correct.
And so under the system of white supremacy, it's the non-white people who suffer the most. So they need help the most. That's according to the white supremacist statistics that you just read off yourself. It's the non-white people who are hurting the most. And it's based on color. Because somebody thought up an idea called racism, which said we have a population of people on this planet who are eligible to be mistreated based on they are the wrong color. And so you ask the question, well, what is the wrong color? Well, the wrong color is whatever I say it is, and that's the white supremacist ideology. And I say that if you have dark skin, you're the wrong color. So therefore, you're eligible to be mistreated by all of the stuff I have stockpiled. I just give you just enough to beg for more. And I am entertained by that. I feel good about myself by being in position to do that. I wake up every morning and look at you suffering, and that makes me feel good because you're the wrong color. Why are you the wrong color? Because I said so. That's my choice. And I made that choice. And I enjoy that choice. So that's what we have to get rid of here in 2013 in the march, with the march symbolizing that in 1963.
63. Stay right there, right. Mr. Fuller. More to come. This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I'm Brother Kahari. Stay right there. More to come on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
Hi, I'm Joan London, and if you're worried about your parent or a loved one living alone like I was, and you want reliable senior care information, then call A Place for Mom, the nation's largest senior living referral service. You'll get free information on assisted living, Alzheimer's care, nursing homes, even important financial information.
They had obviously researched every place, not just given me names. Really? They found me a place for what she could afford, and it was magnificent.
We're now very confident that she's safe, and they just helped every step of the way, and I can't thank them enough.
So if you're struggling to find reliable senior living information, call A Place for Mom. This is a free service, and you can trust them to help you.
If you're struggling to find reliable senior living information for your mom or dad, then call or go online to get the free help you need during this turbulent time. Call now, 800-371-5898, 800-371-5898.
Richard Holt, research chemist, University of Rio Grande in southeastern Ohio. With your skin, you can see your condition. Richard's Remedy is a multi-purpose cream that works on a variety of skin conditions. I sell it in a 1-ounce container through the internet for $12.95 at richardsremedy.com.
All major credit cards accepted. Call 937-607-4259 or go to email info@talktainmentradio.com for a free sample of Richard's Remedy.
T-Mobile presents The Simple Choice.
With T-Mobile, I can walk out with the new Samsung Galaxy S4 for way less than at AT&T.
We have a big family.
T-Mobile.
Awesome. And now we'll all have the coolest phones in school. It almost makes up for the social stigma of living in a shoe. You live in a shoe.
Choose to spend less upfront at activation for your new Samsung Galaxy S4 at T-Mobile.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
Every baby can have the freedom to move their way in Pampers Cruisers. They adapt at the waist, legs, and bottom with up to 12 hours of protection for our driest, best-fitting diaper. Pampers.
Years ago, identical twins were separated at birth. Chris Paul was destined for life of basketball. Cliff Paul was destined to become a State Farm agent. They shared one invaluable trait. They were both born to assist. Find an agent born to get you to a better state.
We've got the power.
Justice is better than racism.
This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio the way it should be heard. I'm Brother Kahari, sitting in every week at this time with Mr. Fuller. We go where you go. Download the new TTR Talktainment Radio app to your new Android, iPhone, or tablet. Now you can take us wherever you go, and it's free. Download today. All right, that's a new app. Mr. Fuller, we got a new app. That means people can get that application. They can download it to their Android phone, iPhone, or tablet. That means you can hear Mr. Fuller on your phone, on your iPhone, or even your tablet. As a matter of fact, there's no place now on the world that you cannot hear Talktainment Radio. And you can download it today. It's free. Once again, we go where you go. Download the new Talktainment Radio application or app to your Android, iPhone, or tablet. Now you can take us wherever you go, and it's free. Download today. Mr. Fuller, 101 million, 150 million in poverty. I want to go and look once again to this 147 companies. I don't know if you've had a chance to do any thinking about that. I know we had talked about it before. Get your thoughts on it's a strange, it's like an incestuous kind of thing that they've set up. They've got interlocking boards. That means that if you sit on this board, you sit on that board. They got interlocking investments. That means everybody that's in that thing is interconnected, investing in each other. They've got interlocking objectives and goals. So it's a powerful net, interlocking marriages. So it's all locked in. And then the more that you expand it out, the more you are committed, to that net. And even when you find Chinese or Indian companies, by the way, they just talked about the Indian people from India, their growth is off. They're not growing like they should, so something's happening, so we can start to see that dynamic shift begin to take place now. But all of them are locked in to this network, and without that network, they don't exist. All that network would have to tell their politicians to China is that we're going to slap an embargo on all of the products that are made there and they can't sell in the United States. Or Britain would say the same thing. It shuts China down almost totally, completely. That's the kind of hold they have on it. So, Mr. Fuller, let me get your thoughts on this 147. That's a strange number anyway, but let me get your thinking on how that is maintained for at least 400 or 500 years. That same structure has been in place. How is that maintained, Mr. Fuller?
Well, it comes under different names and different ways of doing things the same way, but different styles. That's the only thing that has changed in the system of white supremacy. Like I said, the system of white supremacy is the only real government on the planet. So every now and then, they just kind of move around. They paint up the chairs and whatnot, and redesign the walls and redo the sidewalks and all like that, all over the world of their structure. Or if you want to liken it to a ship at sea, I mean, you just refurbish the ship. I mean, you go into the storage room and you say, okay, well, we're going to redesign the storage room so that the type of cargo we're going to have now is designed for storage and shipping of this type that will fit the type of cargo we're going to have. We had boxes last month, and this month we're going to have cattle. So we're going to redesign this part of the ship. And so that's all they really do. They just redesign stuff. But the basic format is the same. Stomp on the non-white people and laugh about it. This is what it's really all about. Glorify in it. Sit up and eat and drink. Toast to it. Celebrate it. I mean, build your culture on it. Make movies about it. Laugh at them. It's about fun, glory, and material gain. Now, they already have the material gain. They're not trying to get it. They have the oil, they have the diamonds, they have all of this. And they have black people begging for it, and non-white people begging for it, and working for it, and trying to get it. Sometimes they're spending a whole lifetime just trying to get a diamond. And when you get the diamond, what do you do with it? You show it off and say, look what I got. Look what Master provided for me. On his terms, of course, and her terms, racist man and racist woman. But I got one. It took me a lifetime to get it and pay for it, but I got one. See how it sparkles? And the white supremacists sit back and say, yeah, I got you trained. I got you trained. And a whole lot of dark-skinned people perish so that you can wear that diamond on your finger.
So what you're telling me...
when they're in those mines, they are dying by the bushel. And I love it. And you finally get one of them, because I'll let you have one or two, and you think that you really got something important, and you walk around the neighborhood strutting around, showing it off to your friends, and that's exactly how I want you to be, because you can't figure out what's going on at all except what I tell you anyway.
Mr. Fuller, would you say that white supremacy is a conspiracy? Mr.
Absolutely. Fuller? What is a conspiracy? See, here we get into words. A conspiracy is just two or more people getting together.
In a room.
Or anywhere, in an open field, and having a conversation with each other about doing something to someone, usually doing something to someone that's going to be detrimental to that someone. That's all it is. Two or more people, conspiracy. So you got to have at least two people to have a conspiracy, all right? And once, that's the way it's usually thought of. So you get two or more people, and they say, we are going to do harm to Mary Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary Jones doesn't know anything about this harm that we're going to do. That's a conspiracy. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So then they do the harm to Mary Jones, and for whatever reason they did it, and the conspiracy then has worked. That's all it is. So the system of white supremacy is a conspiracy, meaning two or more white people get together, sometimes by the thousands, by the millions, and say, we are going to do harm to people who we classify as non-white.
Now, and
in the process, we might have to hurt a few white people. We'll call them white sacrifices, but that's the cost of doing business. Because after all, white supremacy is a business. So sometimes you have business losses. They factor that into the equation. Percentages. That's what it's called.
Okay. Now, Mr. Fuller, the people who revealed the 147 companies, it's kind of interesting because there's a total, there are about 737 of them, but the 147 are the ones that really call the shots, and the top 20, top 50 even are really the ones that call the shot, as you know how that works. But what's interesting is that these are guys from the Swiss Institute that did all this research, right? Out of Switzerland. They say, it's just no big deal. It's nothing conspiratorial about it. It's just a connection. They just happen to have all the money and manage trillions of dollars in assets, who are not predominantly people who may not be in the so-called 1%. The number of custodial banks on the list. This is just a harmless association for people to, just because a bunch of white folks work together that doesn't make them white supremacists. Mr. Fuller, what's your response to this?
I would say that it doesn't sound like, if they say it's not white supremacy, it's not the dominant factor, if I understand out of everything that they're saying, in this pretty way, you might say, if the bottom line is they're saying that the white supremacist ideology and white supremacist intentions are not the dominant factor in this, then they are not telling the truth.
Why? Why are they not telling the truth?
Because white supremacy is the dominant factor in the existence of the non-white people on this planet.
No. Let's say if we had to take it to court. As you say, you always want to put down the arguments that you could use in court. Let's take it to court, and I want you to make your argument.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, I would just say that the white supremacists dominate the non-white people of this planet in all areas of activity, 24/7, no exceptions. That's in economics, everything that deals with economics, education, everything that deals with education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. The people who classify themselves as white, I'm not talking about all white people now, but those white people who have decided to be, and that's a decision, white supremacists are the dominant people of the non-white people of this entire planet every minute of every day in every one of those areas of activity that I just listed. Economics through war. They tell the non-white people what to do, what not to do, what they can do, what they can't do, when to do it, how to do it, and how they bet not do anything outside of what they are told to do, or else. And that's the offer that they make that they cannot refuse, because they operate on gangster principles, because the system of white supremacy is a gangster government, by the definition of what gangsters are, what mobsters are, just like the ancient Roman Empire, according to their own admission. Gangster operation. I mean, put the muscle on people. Let's go south and conquer. Conquer everything.
Now, Mr. Fuller,
right.
There are white people who would say Mr. Fuller, we are as much a victim of the corporate elite as black people, as brown people, and as yellow people. And there are movies out. One is called Weed. I don't know if you're familiar with a television series on HBO. One's called Weed. The other's called Breaking Bad, in which both of those series depict whites who have lost their jobs, who are victims, and what's peculiar, they wind up working with black people, often bossed by black people, especially in Breaking Bad, and they seem to, go along with it. They don't seem to be white supremacists, so it appears to me that there may be, what they're trying to say is that millions of whites are equal victims of white supremacy, and that it's just that small corporate elite that are running any kind of courtocracy, is what they call it, that are running any kind of system of injustice. What's your response to that, Mr. Fuller?
That's camouflage. That's to hide the system of white supremacy for what it really is. Because, like I said before, in the business of white supremacy, and it is a business, you have losses. And these losses have a name that I gave to them because they won't name it themselves. So I call it white sacrifices. I started calling it that as far back as 40 years ago, meaning you will have a certain percentage in every city of white people sleeping under the bridge, lying on park benches, begging for quarters. Yes, and they are very visible because there's so few of them, all right? They really stand out. See, that's one thing that people probably don't think about.
Mm-hmm.
But, anywhere you have a lot of people, period, the way the white supremacists operate, they'll say, yes, we will have a percentage of white people who will be losses in our business of white supremacy. And we will make these white people very visible. We will make their poverty very stark. It will really stand out. They will be just as ragged as anybody can get. They will be down and out. I mean, when black people ride by in their fancy cars,
Lexus.
They will see these white people eating out of garbage cans.
Literally, yeah.
But see, here's what. Percentage-wise, there will be many, 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 many millions of fewer white people doing that than the non-white people throughout the entire planet.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to remember, one should think about, when you talk about white supremacy, you're not talking about in one or two places. You're talking about worldwide. They do business worldwide. So percentage-wise, worldwide, the average white person is much better off, meaning there is a lot of material benefits and all types of benefits that go with being white that you don't get on the average if you're black. And the darker your skin is, the fewer benefits worldwide. That's just the way the white supremacist system works. That's obvious. The white supremacists themselves will admit to this. And then at the same breath, they will turn right around, the same white supremacists, and say, white supremacy doesn't exist. After giving you these facts, I mean, I wouldn't know about these facts except they're telling me. They will tell me because they say, well, black people's brains are not wired to be logical anyway. Many white supremacists believe that. So when we even tell them the truth and then turn right around and say white supremacy doesn't exist, they'll just nod to that too because they don't know what to nod to. They can't think. They're incapable of thinking. That's how we took them over in the first place. They are people who are just a bundle of emotions. They can jump up and down and scream and yell, but they can't do anything of constructive value without a white person holding their hand. And that's a fact. That's what they say about us. The question is that true?
That's a very good question. Mr. Fuller, stay right there. More to come on Penn Story Concept, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
T-Mobile presents The Simple Choice.
With T-Mobile, I can walk out with the new Samsung Galaxy S4 for way less than at AT&T. We have a big family. T-Mobile.
Awesome. Well, now we'll all have the coolest phones in school. It almost makes up for the social stigma of living in a shoe. You live in a shoe.
Choose to spend less upfront at activation for your new Samsung Galaxy S4 at T-Mobile.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
Every baby can have the freedom to move their way in Pampers Cruisers. They adapt at the waist, legs, and bottom with up to 12 hours of protection for our driest, best-fitting diaper. Pampers.
Years ago, identical twins were separated at birth. Chris Paul was destined for life of basketball. Cliff Paul was destined to become a State Farm agent. They shared one invaluable trait. They were both born to assist. Find an agent born to get you to a better state.
We've got the power.
Justice is better than racism.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. Of course, joining me is Mr. Neely Fuller. You can pick up his two books, The Compensatory Concept and The Word Guide, at www.producejustice.com. I hope I didn't say too many W's in there, but you can really go to producejustice.com. And you can pick up Mr. Fuller's works. All you have to do is follow the prompt. These are two what we call the most definitive works, in my opinion, probably the most definitive works ever written on this whole subject, on this whole dynamic on this planet, that dynamic of race. I have never seen a work as dynamic, as definitive, as clarifying as this work has been, whether you agree or disagree. He lays it out in such a way until it challenges you to address the issue. You can't just walk away and walk away. You got to deal with something. And very, very powerful work. Mr. Fuller, we were talking about how these campaigns are put in place to make people think what doesn't exist exists, even though they say it right in your face. Is it because, in particular, is it because black people, is it true, Mr. Fuller, that we don't think? Is this possible? Have we reached a point of where we just have become so backwards that we're not thinking about anything? Is this possible in the year 2013, Mr. Fuller?
The answer is yes. It's possible, and it's true that we don't think. That doesn't say we can't think, but we have been trained by the white supremacists. You're talking about a long-running show here. You're talking about what some people say goes back at least 2,000 years. Some people say 6,000 years. I say I don't know. But for a long time, the white supremacists have been in business, and they have trained their victims to think to the extent that the white supremacists want them to think, and to not to think beyond that. You know, after all, the basic format for the system of white supremacy is just plain slavery. You know, it's all types of slavery and whatnot. When you enslave a people based on color in all nine areas of activity, they are complete slaves. So you can always, if you're a master, tell your victims what you want them to know. And one of the things that the white supremacists tell their victims is, I don't want you thinking. Even in what we call chattel slavery or Negro slavery or the African slave trade. Mm-hmm. One of the first things that the master of the house would do on the plantation was let that Negro know, the Negro slave, that's what he was called, him or her. Now, I don't want you reading my books. If you're sneaking around here trying to read, trying to learn anything other than what I tell you, I'm going to punish you. I'm going to whip you so that you will learn your lesson. So over a period of time, when you keep treating people like that, people get to the place where they don't even want to learn because they get punished for learning. I mean, things are withheld from them. And so over a period of generations, you find that just pass that on to your offspring. Oh, don't bother to learn anything. I mean, there'll be somebody else who will figure everything out. I mean, if you're going to get fed, somebody will feed you. I mean, Master, I mean, he lives up the road. He eats every day. And, he'll look out for us because, after all, nobody else ever did. And so you become absolutely dependent on that. And then the white supremacists setting that up, even in the modern day, they will point to the black person and say, oh, you just want to sit around and draw welfare. Well, now, who taught us that, sir? Who taught us to not be wanting to do anything for ourselves, not want to have a piece of land that we can work for ourselves, back in what you call chattel slavery? You didn't give us anything. I mean, we never got to 40 acres and a mule. And so here in 2013, you're saying, well, there's something genetically wrong with you. No. After you have had a whole bunch of practice whipping us for trying to do anything that made sense, then you blame us, blame the victim, and even say that we shouldn't even call ourselves victims. Now you even have some black people saying, well, I mean, we shouldn't get into a victim mentality and whatnot. Well, now, if you got white supremacy in place, white supremacy has to have victims. Now, who are the victims? I mean, are there some mysterious people from some other planet who are the victims of white supremacy? White supremacy has to have victims. Many people admit that white supremacy exists, so where are the victims? The title of my book is that my book is written for victims of white supremacy. I list myself as a victim of white supremacy, and I'm either lying or telling the truth.
All right. So is it true? Is it really true that we are, if this has been going on this long, Mr. Fuller, that would imply that white people are not just superior organizationally. What you're implying is that they are superior genetically as well as mentally, as well as spiritually, as well as physically, in every aspect of life. In order to control and keep a people stupid, backward, and dumb for up to 2,000 years, those people would have to be, who are kept in that state, would have to be inferior, and those people who keep them in that state would have to be superior in all aspects. Is that what we're looking at, Mr. Fuller?
I don't say that it's genetic. See, that's what some of them say. They say black people are just that way. That there's nothing you can do for black people. I mean, to make them think in a constructive manner. A black person just can't think about doing anything constructive. That a black person is just wired to do nothing at all, or to do something that's very trivial or childlike, or to do something that's absolutely destructive. And that's all that a black person is capable of doing.
Is that true?
I believe it's not. At one time, they almost had me believing it because they're pretty good teachers at lowering your self-esteem. See, that's one thing that you do with a slave. You get with when you enslave a person, one thing that you really want to do with that slave, if you don't want to watch that slave all the time, you make the slave think that him or herself, the slave, him or herself, is a worthless piece of organism. In other words, just something that's nothing. And black people themselves, that's why we kill each other en masse, because we really have self-contempt.
But we're not the greatest killers.
No.
Nowhere near.
But the white supremacists put that in their mind. Oh, well, a black person is something that's worthless, something that's really in the way.
Mm-hmm.
You can use it every now and then. You can go and get a black person to do a few things here and a few things there. I mean, out of compassion, out of the kindness of your heart. But really, these things that you call black people shouldn't even be in existence. But we white people, we'll tolerate it because, after all, they are created by whatever the creator decided to create them for. But really, they are useless on this planet. Maybe on some other planet they would be perfect. But here on this planet, they're just in the way. In the way of whom? We white people. I mean, but these black people shouldn't even be here. But we'll tolerate their presence because, after all, our creator put them here.
Mr. Fuller, do you really...
So we'll tolerate them. Many, many, many millions of white people believe that.
You really believe they do?
They act like they do, and the record shows it. Otherwise, why are we having a march?
Well, you're having a march, I guess, to commemorate 50 years of progress. So maybe it would say that things have changed from where it was and that people are trying to produce justice. Wouldn't that be a rationale?
Well, I understand that a huge part of the march is saying we have a long ways to go. Now, why is it we have a long ways to go if something is not out of order? Because when they say we have a long ways to go, they mean, what do you mean, traveling down a road? Or do you mean we have to improve our interaction, white versus non-white?
Then why?
That we are still in this mode after all this time. And this morning's Washington Post, some white people have done some research recently, and according to a couple of articles that I glanced at, apparently some white people are saying, hey, the root cause of all of these disparities in income and housing and all the rest of it is still the same old thing. Racism, discrimination. That's what it is. And this is 2013. So we're still talking about the same thing. It's not anything different. It's different, just different degrees. Now, truth be told, a lot of black people are more comfortable now than they were in 1920 throughout the entire world.
Correct.
But so is everybody. I mean, you couldn't compare the average Chinese in China, his condition or her condition, with what it was in 1920. See, so yes, things have improved for everybody on the planet, but they are not equal, one person to another, or anywhere close to it. There are people who are still dying from malaria. Malaria was supposed to be been wiped out, eons ago, and dying from cholera, and dying unnecessarily from all sorts of things that if someone was doing, people were doing like they should be doing, the people of this planet, particularly the people who are the controlling people, the dominant people, the white supremacists. If they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, the smartest people in the world were doing what they are supposed to be doing, you wouldn't have any starving people. This planet will take care of everybody. 10, 15, 30 times over. Every person who is starving would have food running out of their ears if the people who are running the planet believed in justice. But they don't. They believe in following the Roman model. Keep that in mind.
Right.
And the Roman model is, I take everything. I don't leave anything for you. I take everything, and then I just dribble out just enough to make you want more and to make you look up to me. This is the formula. That's the whole culture of the system of white supremacy. It's all about, I'm going to make you look up to me like I am the new modern version of the Roman gods. You look up to me as God. We'll make a movie called Godfather to show you the format for that. You look up to me. That's what it's all about. Not us, cooperating with each other, treating each other kindly. Willing to have a helping hand. With nobody just scrambling and trying to get credit for it and all like that. Everybody trying to elbow everybody else out of the way. That's the Roman format. Okay? Oh, no, but that's what we love. So we got to have someone to look down on. Otherwise, I can't feel good about myself. I don't even want to live. And if it gets to the place where I got to treat people kindly and just be another face in the crowd and just be happy and they're happy and everybody's happy and everybody's prosperous and all like that, I don't want that. I want a world that's loaded with guns and explosives. And if things get quiet, I get bored.
Mr. Fuller, I've got someone on the line. We've got told him we got about 3 or 4 minutes left in the show. So, caller, go ahead.
Yes. How you doing, Mr. Fuller?
I'm still learning.
Yes, sir. My question is real quick. I had ordered your book on producer justice, and I think highly of you. And the other thing is, I listen to some of your podcasts here on Talk Payment Radio and so forth. So I was wondering, do you still do lectures? And if so, how do a person find out where they can,
Well, probably what I'll do is, if you stay on the line, I will get the information from Mr. Fuller, and then we can talk about that afterwards. Is that okay, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, sir. Oh.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. I'll just handle that. So I'll just.
But really, the short answer is no, I don't. Right. I don't travel anymore and do lectures.
Okay, yes, sir.
Right.
Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you.
Oh, okay then. All right then. Thank
right.
you. I appreciate your call. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, Mr. Fuller. As we close in what we're doing here, you said something very, very powerful, and you said white people think a certain way, and black people still, after all these years, haven't figured it out. Mr. Fuller, does that make us inferior intellectually? Is that what it comes down to, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, the straight, depending on how you want to use the word inferior, but you say inferior intellectually.
Dumber.
And that's not genetically.
How about dumber?
But by intellectually, that means having knowledge and understanding.
Yes.
Oh, big time. Are we ever?
Big
Otherwise,
gap.
we wouldn't be in the shape that we're in. But that doesn't say that we can't get intelligent.
Right.
See, no one is born intelligent, okay? A baby is not born. I don't care if it's what baby you name, Albert Einstein or Confucius. I mean, when they come into the world, it's a lot of things that they don't know that they have to be taught. Be taught by whom? The people who are already here. So this is how you become intelligent if you want to fast forward. I mean, if you had to learn everything from scratch, you wouldn't know an apple from a rock, and you'd be trying to eat rocks. That's anybody, whether they're white or non-white. So how do you learn? How do you become an intelligent person? By learning from people who already know. And that means you have to gather up knowledge from people who have made a lot of mistakes and finally came up with the correct formula over a period of thousands of years. So if you can gather that knowledge real fast, and some people do it, then you will become an intelligent person. That's all intelligence is. But you've got to be willing to learn. That's why I always say when people ask me, how am I say, I'm still learning. Because we're all still learning, or should be learning. Every minute of the day, we should be trying to learn something of constructive value that we didn't know 5 minutes before. Because if you can do that, and do that in rapid-fire action, you will become a over-the-top smart person. I don't care who you are or where you're from or how dumb you used to be, just by that formula. Just learn something of constructive value every chance you get. And it's amazing how fast you can learn and become an intelligent person. But if you just say, I know everything, like some black people have been taught to say, see, and the white supremacists do that type of thing, let that Negro think that he knows everything and have him going around bragging about knowing everything. How many times have you heard black people in a barbershop say, oh, man, shut up, you don't know nothing?
Yeah, all the time.
Right.
All the time. Wow, Mr. Fuller, this time really has passed a lot quicker than I thought it was. But at any rate, thank you for your analysis, and I think it's given me a lot to think about, some new stuff always that's thought-provoking and deep, and we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
All right.